So, thank you very much. And before we start with the panel, I just want to take a little bit of your time reflecting as a sort of introduction. I take this hegemonic stance as the organizer, that I just take a little bit of the rostrum here of the stage for this performance. I want to show you this picture. Queer Paradigm 6, part merged with Variabilities 2, with the theme of towards a queered, the possibility towards a queered ethics or variable as a queer, post-queer, variable ethics. So we had in Winchester very, very inspiring dialogues and papers around questions that in other universities would be called critical disability studies, but we prefer variabilities because the dis in disability is in itself part of a hegemonic discourse. So going on from there, when I was the Numata Professor of Buddhist Studies in McGill last year, I picked up the paper on the Free Metro newspaper, the French-speaking one. And it has this article on Aube Hernandez, Le Pirate de Montréal. And what we could say, a variable person who's lacking the left leg, and who explains that his bodily performance prompted so many discriminatory discourses in his life that he decided to take one of the discourses thrown at him and make it an identity performance. He he performs being a pirate all year around and walks around Montreal in this way, dressed as a pirate, sometimes with a parrot. And I think this is a wonderful example. If you read the articles, an interview with Mr. Hernandez, then it can speak to something that intersects with feminists and queer activism and disability variabilities activism. Namely, the question of how scripts, societal scripts thrown at us, can be interpreted, reappropriated, and celebrated in individual life story self-narrations. So here's an individual who decided to have agency and voice in his impairment by taking an oppressive discourse and changing it around, queering it, troubling it, subverting it. So I think that's a wonderful thing. The question I had in mind when I came up with this part of the call for paper, in collaboration here with Chris and Stan, who are doing organizing the Winchester conference, so which I basically just want to introduce you also and thank. And when we came up with towards queer ethics, one of the questions I have, and I still have, in contemporary queer theory and feminist thought, is the tension between validating and celebrating the individual stories, his stories, her stories. What? Okay, that's you. Between celebrating, validating individuals' experiences and making sense of an oppressed situation on the one hand, and on the other hand, not throwing the baby out of the bathwater by becoming apologetic to the oppressive system. Yeah? And I see that sometimes in some strands of queer theory, intersectional queer theory, subaltern theory, post-colonial feminism, that the acceptance and celebration of the agency, in Mahmoud's terms, and the agency of the colonized and oppressed subject on the one hand, goes so far as to provide apologies and apologetic strategies for the heteropatriarchal oppression that actually frames that agency. We see that in discussions about veils, Islamic veils, female genital cutting, South Asian dowry. There is the tendency to overlook that you can do two things at the same time. Give voice and agency to the oppressed subjects and celebrate that, but at the same time also keep on countering heteropatriarchal systems that limit these expressions. So while we celebrate the pirate, we also have to reflect and as activists fight to the oppression of impaired or somehow where an inability becomes a disability, where an othering becomes a screen of ridicule and oppression. So I think we can do both things, and this is something that I think might be a question we need to ask. It is connected with things such as strategic essentialisms. Spivak's idea of strategic essentialisms, how we use in queer theory and activism, at the one hand, decolonized agency and voices, at the other hand, still go against patriarchy, heteropatriarchy, where we can find it. And this is a balance I want to, I hope we will also explore a little bit in this conference. And I also might have said things that people disagree with, so I hope we have maybe also discussions about it. Yeah, maybe some people think, well, okay, I'm very Mahmoudist. I don't really believe that these current trends in feminism and queer theory have it right always with just overemphasizing agency of the post-colonial, decolonial subject. I think there is a danger there, and people may completely disagree with that, and maybe we have a discussion about that. So this was my idea when we discussed the ethics part. Now, I've took enough of your time. I hijacked my privilege. And I made it hegemonic. I gave myself a voice, and I actually say something hopefully really, really controversial, and I don't give you the chance to answer. So you see, I'm an agent of oppression here.